Now, we are at the Regent Hotel. We are at the lobby. Guess what we just did? We checked in room.
609.
Yeah. So Sean says he wants to walk the path of the murderer.
I think you could fit in it.
Let me tell you, been waiting for that room to be ready for 1 hour. Something is actually kind of dodgy because I think they have some remarks about this 609. It's not a straightforward case.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe they got to clean up another scene. 609.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
Uh-oh.
Feels like nice material, though. Yeah.
What? What do you say?
I said it feel a bit sad.
Have a sad feeling in here?
Yeah, sad feeling.
Of course. He was a new father, just got married and had a baby, you know? He didn't deserve this.
No, he didn't.
Poor Ibrahim.
Good afternoon and welcome again to Dangerous Persons 2.0 English channel. Today I am here again with Chief Inspector Norman McKilloff to shed light on a murder that unraveled a giant Hong Kong financial entity, which resulted in the longest and largest fraud trial in Hong Kong history. Good afternoon, Norman. How are you?
Good afternoon, fine, thanks.
Great. Many thanks for being here again, Norman. Let's get to the murder that broke the Carian Empire apart. In 1983, an old lady found a body in a banana plantation out in Tai Po. This body appeared to be deliberately stripped of all identification. However, a Malaysian 10-cent coin was found in the lining of this, or in the cuff of this gentleman's trousers, and a towel belt from a bathroom was around his neck, and well, this is how he was found. You were the leading inspector assigned to handle this case. So my first question, now that you have this case, can you please tell us what were your first steps to get a grip on this?
Well, we didn't take the case over immediately. The the New Territories Regional Crime Squad dealt with the initial scene, dealt with the case initially.
Okay.
And part of their early investigations was to check missing persons.
Okay.
And they discovered that there was a Malaysian banker reported missing. And the report was made by Mr. Chin from Bank Bumiputra.
This would be Henry
Chin.
Okay.
So there was an early breakthrough in the case. And they also found the 1 cent Malaysian coin in the lining of his trousers in the pocket. So we had a pretty good idea who this person was. And Henry Chin was brought to the mortuary where he identified the body as being Jalil.
Okay. Then Henry is Jali's
colleague.
colleague.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is Jali Ibrahim.
Jalil Ibrahim.
Jalil Ibrahim. Okay.
So we had a pretty good start. So the next day, we visited the scene, which was reasonably intact at the time. Of course, the body had gone. And the case was officially handed over to us.
Okay.
Once I realized that there was a bank involved,
Yeah.
and that Jalil was a banker, then I thought, well, we need to do a search warrant on the bank. So, being a kind of rough and tumble old homicide detective at the time, I thought I'd better get some suits in, some commercial crime experts in commercial crime to help me. So I dictated a warrant, an application for a warrant over the phone for one of my team to approach a magistrate and get a warrant for the bank.
Okay.
So that when we went to the bank that same day, we would have a warrant to search the bank.
Okay, and you had some CCB officers with you.
They met me there,
They met you there. Okay.
and I had two very young. I was young too, but commercial crime officers. One of whom had quite a lot of banking experience.
Okay.
So we took the team and went to the bank, and we met some of the head people there, including Henry Chin, who filled us in with the details of what had happened, that this person, Jalil Ibrahim, had been missing for a couple of days. So we informed them that we were going to execute a warrant and search the bank. At that stage, we were searching the bank, not the whole bank, but we wanted to search the offices, particularly the desk of Jalil, which was our first priority.
Okay.
So while me and my team were interviewing Henry Chin and some other managers there to ascertain the movements of the deceased, we found one of the commercial crime officers found a diary in Jalil's desk.
Okay.
The diary turned out to be very crucial because it mentioned that Jalil had found that a Tan Sri Ibrahim, Tan Sri meaning a kind of lord in Malaysian system, was to arrive, and he was coming to the Regent Hotel and requested that he be given some money.
Okay. So this is the
exchange some money.
okay. This is a normal banking practice. A VIP comes in town, wants to exchange some money. He doesn't need to come to the bank.
Yeah, that's the story that we were told
Okay.
when we put it to Chin. Why would Jalil go across there to meet this person and give him money when he's he's quite an important person himself, Jalil, in the bank.
Yes. Yes.
And it was a very, very important day because there was some kind of deal going on that Jalil was partly supervising or keeping an eye on. So anyway, we started to focus on the Regent Hotel,
Okay.
while the commercial crime team, who were part of my homicide team, would feed me everything they found from the diary and the matters in the bank. One of the commercial officers got quite excited because apart from the diary, he started looking at some other papers in Jalil's desk, and it became apparent to him that this was possibly a huge issue for the finances of Hong Kong in terms of, as he said it to me, this could lead to the fall of several banks. What he'd discovered just in a short time. And I asked him to elaborate for me, and he said, I can't tell you. So I said to him, don't be so ridiculous. It's a murder inquiry, and you tell me everything you found.
Yes.
So he said that seemed to be a huge loans from this particular bank to Carrion, which was then already under scrutiny. Carrion having exploded everywhere in Hong Kong with Carrion Travel, Carrion Taxis, Carrion everything. Everywhere was Carrion.
Yeah.
And so it was under scrutiny at the time of the murder, and it was already in trouble. Even I knew that. So he was quite serious. So he was a bit worried about it. So anyway, we wrapped up that day quite late at night or the early hours of the following morning. I decided to keep the warrant open. So the bank was eventually seized. We seized the whole bank, not just for one day, but we seized it, I think, for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
We kept that warrant open, including the walk-in safe vault,
Okay.
which contained millions of dollars in documents, bearer shares, essentially.
Yeah.
So I had the ballistics officer who was also the key expert, to change the locks on that walk-in vault, and divulge he asked me to give him a code, which is a very simple code, so that I wouldn't forget it. So I was the only one who had the code for this.
A vault that's
the vault,
containing
which
this.
contained huge amounts of documents and bearer shares.
Yeah,
which
a
is
huge
the
fortune.
same as money.
Yeah.
So anyway, we kept that warrant open for several weeks while we were doing very intensive investigations inside the bank. But then the commercial crime aspect of it became more and more. So I didn't want to be diverted from the murder inquiry when we had so many commercial crime experts. So I
Pushed that over.
pushed
to
that
the-
over to them.
Yeah.
On the proviso that if they found anything that they thought was even remotely related to the murder, that they would let me know, which they did. Not only in the next few weeks, but also many years down the line.
Yes.
Not only by commercial crime, but handed over to anti-corruption and other bodies.
Yeah.
So we then concentrated on the Regent Hotel.
Okay. So this the umbrella. You're in charge of this umbrella.
Yes,
Okay, and one aspect of it, the banking commercial side, is now gone to the CCB guys,
yes,
who will tell you whatever they find.
yes.
And you are going to focus solely on the murder.
On the murder.
Okay.
And of course, our overall charge
Yeah,
of it, so it was still primarily the murder that we were looking at. The accent shifted once we'd caught the murderer. That the accent that shifted, the focus shifted to entirely on the commercial side.
Okay.
So I was relieved of that side of it.
Okay.
Thank God.
Yeah. But you get updates.
Yes,
Okay.
it went on for years.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, we focus on the region. I got teams over there focusing on the hotel, focusing on the airlines, focusing on other aspects. Who was coming in Hong Kong, because we knew it was a Malaysian. We knew by then he was a banker. So when we went to the region, we very quickly found that room 609
609?
was the focus.
Okay.
And that had been booked by Mak Foon Tan in his
Okay.
own name. Yeah,
Mak Foon Tang
Mak Foon
had.
Tan.
Now, you said before that Jalib Ibrahim is going over to meet Tan Sri.
Tan Sri Ibrahim.
So who's Tan Sri
Tan Sri Ibrahim was
Was a Rus?
very, very well known businessman in Malaysia. He wasn't in Hong Kong at that time.
Okay, so they just used his
He
name.
used his name.
Okay, and is this Mac who did this?
We don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
We don't know to
Okay.
this day.
Okay, so you know that, but you know that Mac booked the room.
Yes.
Okay,
Not only that, but we knew that Mac met Jalil Ibrahim
okay,
in the lobby of the hotel.
okay. Do you have a rough timeline around this?
The Regent helped us solve this case. It
Okay.
was one of the first hotels with proper CCTV, with
Their booking system
the
was
booking system,
computerized?
the door lock system, when the door was open, when the door was closed.
Oh, you got a
It was
timer on
locked
it.
from the inside or the outside. When food was delivered, who delivered it?
Okay.
What was the food? When was it delivered?
Uh-huh.
When were the dishes left outside the door or taken away?
Okay.
What was the room temperature?
Oh, okay.
It was quite amazing way back then.
Yeah.
So the manager of the hotel at that time who assisted us most was a Japanese lady, and we set up an office in the Regent Hotel.
Okay.
We focused our investigations there. We had the room boy who helped Mak Foon Tan take a suitcase. We had the timings for that. He then got into a taxi. We had the taxi number written down, as you'd expect.
Okay.
Not in these days, you wouldn't
Yeah.
have expected it, but it was done.
Okay.
So we had the taxi driver who we traced.
Okay.
And so over the next few days, we made significant progress very, very quickly.
Okay.
So we knew he'd been taken to a hire car place.
Okay. So now you mentioned something about how the bellboy brought a bag down.
Yeah.
So this bag, can you tell us about this suitcase?
At that time, it
Yeah.
was a suitcase. It was very, very heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
Extremely heavy. The bellboy had to help, the guest had to help the bellboy get it to the lift and take it down to put it in the taxi.
Okay, so but the bottom line is when Mac checked in, the hotel records
There
showed
was no suitcase.
there was no suitcase.
No.
So please tell us, how does the suitcase, where's that? Mac gets in around 12 o'clock. That suitcase is put in a taxi at 5 o'clock. So between that 5 hours, where does the suitcase come from?
Okay, let's not jump ahead.
Okay, sorry, all right.
Let's
Go
deal
ahead.
with what we found about Mac's movements on that day.
Okay, okay.
Leading to, it was only when, after interrogating Mac after the arrest, that we discovered what happened, where the suitcase came from.
Okay,
etc.
all right. So I'm getting ahead of the story. Okay. Go
So
ahead.
we have Mac checking into the hotel the night before. We have Mac meeting Jalil in the lobby, taking him up to the room. We know that Mac had no suitcase, right? He just had a little handbag as they used to carry in these days. We have the bellboy taking the heavy suitcase out to the lift, and we have the taxi driver taking Mac to a hire car company. That led us to the hire car company, where we very quickly established where he was asked to give his passport, photocopies of his passport, driving license.
Okay, Mac was
Yes.
gave it to in order to rent the car.
Yes.
Okay.
So we established who Mac was.
Okay.
And at the same time, once we discovered the identity of Mac, we started checking overseas to find out who this person was. We knew he was a Malaysian citizen,
Okay.
so we contacted our counterparts in Malaysia and started doing inquiries there. And so over the next few days, we made significant progress. We found that he was a petty criminal, you could say, who had seemed to have fled after a fairly minor assault case. He had some background in illegal timber trading and
Okay.
logging, this
Okay.
kind of stuff. So that's what we knew of him at the time.
Okay.
And of course, we had the passport and passport photograph. So obviously, we're checking flights, and it seems that he was still in Hong Kong. So our man was still in Hong Kong. Eventually, because the taxi driver had taken them briefly to a flat in Mei Fu San Chun, which we eventually knew to be the parents' flat of Mac's wife.
Okay. Mac's Hong Kong wife.
Mac's Hong Kong wife, because we'd also discovered that he was married to a Malaysian air hostess, so he was married bigamously
Okay.
twice. So we don't know at that time if either wife knew of the existence of the other. But that's not relevant to us at this stage. So we had an address. So we weren't sure if Mac was there. So we decided to put surveillance on the address. So we handed over the photograph of Mac to the surveillance, the intelligence bureau.
Okay.
That's sometimes a dangerous thing to do because there are leaks in police forces. And we were a bit worried about leaks. So I asked one of our inspectors to make sure that we would monitor the newspapers the next day. So if there was a leak, and it was leaked to the photograph was leaked to the newspapers, then we could move straight away. We wouldn't wait. We would have to get into that flat if he was there.
Okay.
No, we couldn't wait to decide if he was there or not. We had to get in.
I see. Because it was in the newspapers.
Yeah, two reasons.
He
One is
will
that
know.
he could either abscond or his wife could be in danger
Okay.
because she may not have any idea of what he'd been up to.
Okay.
So there was a big worry about that. So I went into the office very early, and the inspector showed me the newspaper, and sure enough, there was a leak, and the photograph appeared in the newspapers. But I knew where the leak came from because before handing the photograph over, I made a mark on it.
Oh.
So I would know where that leak came from.
So you know who leaked it?
I don't know. I knew which department.
Which
leaked it.
department?
But anyway, it's not relevant. So anyway, myself and the inspector just grabbed the car. It was very early hours in the morning.
So you're racing over there.
Yeah, we raced there, just the two of us.
Okay.
Meanwhile, calling for reinforcements.
Yeah.
And we arrived at the place that was very quiet. But then we realized that there was a metal gate.
Yeah.
But we realized there's a camera, CCTV camera there. So we thought, oh, we can't wait. So we called the fire services to help break down the door. And our reinforcements hadn't arrived.
So it's just you and one other inspector.
yeah.
Is that Peter Good?
Yes.
Peter Good. Okay.
So we got through, and the window was open, and Mac had tried to climb down the drain pipes, but he'd fallen. Peter rushed down the stairs and found them hobbling, getting back into the building, obviously trying to pretend he'd just arrived.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but he'd fallen down from a drain pipe.
How many stories are we talking?
Oh, just one. There's not a particularly big,
Okay.
big drop, but enough drop to
I've heard of
sustain some damages.
Okay.
He was on his feet, but obviously in some pain.
Yeah.
And Peter cautioned him right away.
Okay.
In our system, to caution someone is to make the arrest.
Okay.
So he cautioned him. That's my.
So he's physically being
yeah.
squared away here and being
Yes,
cautioned.
but, yeah, he's not handcuffed because we didn't have any handcuffs.
Yeah,
I read some stories about using my tie. Well, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask you that. I heard that. So in your rush, you guys left your handcuffs.
Wow, we didn't carry handcuffs.
Oh, you
around.
didn't
I was
even-
chief inspector. We didn't carry handcuffs.
Oh, okay. All right.
We weren't even armed, I don't think. No. So anyway, we'd already by that time found quite a few things about Mac Phuong Thang, which made us kind of worried that this was going to lead into intergovernment problems, big financial fraud issues.
Yes.
And he was kind of a mysterious guy. We knew he'd been booked into two hotels at the same time, the
Yeah.
Regal Meridian and the Regal.
In the region. So the
In the
Regal
region.
Meridian was at the airport.
Yes.
Okay. And the
So-
region's in Simsat.
Yeah, and he'd been there with his wife, and we'd already found out through the hotel team
Yeah.
that they'd had some altercations, some big rows, and the staff had been called to the Regal Meridian. So there was some issue going on with him and his wife.
Oh.
And
okay.
then he'd booked into the Region Hotel.
Oh. Okay.
So we weren't sure what was going on there, but we knew quite a bit of background
Okay.
about it.
Yeah. I haven't come across any. So he had a row with his wife.
Yes.
Okay. So, but is that a separate thing?
Yeah, separate, but we don't know if it was connected or not.
Okay. Just two events running parallel.
Yes, but the
Okay.
strange thing is that he was booked into two hotels on the same night.
Yeah.
That's very strange.
So did you ever ask? What did he say about that?
Yes, later on.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay.
So there we are. We have him arrested. So we took him directly by ambulance, right, accompanied by Peter and I,
Yeah.
to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital custodial ward, which is where prisoners are taken for. The custodial ward is fully guarded.
Yeah.
As it turned out, the doctors told me he'd broken a small bone in the back, not a major break.
In the lumbar.
Yeah, small bone, and possibly cracked the. I've read that his pelvis is broken. That's, I think, quite an exaggeration.
Okay.
He had some damage, but it wasn't broken until. Okay. So he had injuries which gave him pain, but nothing life-threatening. And he was on his feet, remember, when we found him. So he was put into the custodial ward and received medical treatment.
Okay.
So then the next day we started our interrogation.
Okay. When you say we, this is you
Peter
and...
was with me
Okay.
all the time.
Okay.
We recorded everything and wrote down everything as well.
Yes.
So by that time, the next day, he was in the hospital bed. So we cautioned him again. We knew this was going to be a very sensitive case.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I decided that rather than just go straight in and question him about the Jalil murder or any of that nature, or accuse him of anything, or question him directly on the murder case. I wanted to find out more of his background.
Okay.
So the first long interrogation was him talking rather than me asking a lot of questions. I wanted to find who he was, where he came from, why he was here, how he came to be running down drain pipes at his house, this sort of thing. So that was the tactic on the first day.
Okay.
And he told me a lot about himself, which there was pages and pages of interrogation notes, verbatim.
Okay.
Each page, of course, signed and cautioned at various times.
Okay.
And we had to get permission from the doctors.
To question him.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
This was a
Yeah.
hospital with
Yes.
nurses going around and doctors coming in and examining him.
So if the doctors felt he was in too much pain, they would have said you cannot question.
At any time he could say, look, I want to sleep, I'm in too much pain or something, I want to break, it's fine.
Okay, so he's cooperating.
He was cooperating
Okay.
in the sense that we don't know whether he's telling us the whole truth, but he was cooperating, which is good. Once people start talking, that's good for us.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So we got his story about how he was a fixer for various people, and he helped people out, and he'd done things for government people, and running errands, this sort of thing.
Malaysian government
Yes,
people.
yes.
Okay, not Hong Kong.
Banking people. No, Hong Kong.
Okay.
So the next day, I changed tactics again, and asked them more specific things. You know, do you have a driving license? Have you ever driven in Hong Kong? No. Do you own a car? No. Have you ever hired a car? No. Of course, we had the documents that he had hired a car. He did have a license, but he didn't know that we had all that.
Okay, that he had just rented a hire car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we had got all these negative answers, which we knew were lies.
Okay.
So that was the second day.
Okay.
Right? So the third time was to confront him with the lies.
Okay.
So you remember you said you'd never hired a car. Is that your signature there?
Yeah.
Is this your passport?
Yeah.
And he then knew that. So we left it at that. Let him stew.
Okay.
Let him
All
stew.
right. So you broke off the questioning for the day.
Yes,
Okay.
deliberately.
Okay.
Let him stew for the night, and the next day when we went to see him, I want to tell you everything.
Ah.
You
Okay.
see?
And-
So he'd been thinking all night how to
Yeah.
deal with this.
Yeah.
You know. So the next day was very interesting because it's a long time ago, but it was interesting in the sense that he said that he had been sent over by senior people in the bank,
Yes.
the finance minister in particular, the finance minister
Of Malaysia.
of Malaysia,
Yes.
to come over to deal with some things in Hong Kong. He explained that he came to Hong Kong quite often on their instructions with bags of money, as an errand boy, taking bags of money and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he rambled on about that.
Okay.
And eventually he said on the Jalil issue, he was there in the room, but there was a hitman in the room. And when he was asked to describe the hitman, you see here, I've got quite a prominent scar.
Yeah, I do.
At that time, I had a short sleeve shirt on.
Yeah.
And I saw a twinkle in his eye. And they described the hitman as being about my size, and he had a scar on his arm, a long scar on his arm.
Oh, he's describing you.
Yeah, I knew exactly what he was doing. He's a very, very good liar. He mixes truth with lies, as
Yes.
the best liars do,
Yes.
and almost convince himself by that way that he's actually telling the truth. So he's very, very convincing, and he's quite a charismatic person. In fact, he's quite funny. Even the days of interrogation, we had a rapport.
Okay.
And he had a rapport with Peter Good as well. And that was to come out in the trial later. But there was no aggressiveness in either the way we spoke to him or he spoke to us. And so he explained about this Korean and how he'd met him in the Regent Hotel, the Shangri-La Hotel many years ago when they were doing a deal. And this guy, the Korean, was the hitman.
Okay.
Who sent him out to get a suitcase.
Okay.
Now, this was the crucial bit because I'm focusing on the murder and the evidence for murder. So far, he denied that he was the murderer. There was another person who was the murderer.
Okay.
So my focus then was I didn't believe him even at that stage. So my focus on the murder was, okay, if we can't prove that he actually physically killed Jalil himself, we could prove that he was an accessory.
Okay. This is very important in the court judgment.
Or he was aiding the betting, the
Okay.
actual murder. Now, when he was told that he had to go out and come back for a suitcase, it was quite clear to me that the purpose of the suitcase was to put the body in. There was no other reason, but I had to get from his mouth that he knew about this before Jalil was killed, right? So
Yes.
if he knew about this, he was getting a suitcase to bring back to the hotel before Jalil was killed, then the purpose of the suitcase that he knew was to put the body in the suitcase, then he was an accessory to the murder.
Yes.
So when I asked him at what point did you realize that Jalil was to be killed, he answered me by saying, when I was told to get the suitcase.
Okay. When the Korean told him to get the suitcase.
Then he knew.
And he's telling you Jamil is alive at that moment.
Yeah, so basically
Okay.
that was
That's correct.
that's got him as an accessory. So that was a very, very important part of the interrogation. But he implicated a lot of people or suggested that they were involved in somehow in the carrying case, the Bumiputra case, the fraud, even the murder, by intimating that he'd been sent to carry money here and there
Yes.
on their behalf. So,
Yes.
and it became a very sensitive issue.
Yes.
Because even at that time, the Prime Minister Mahathir and Maggie Thatcher, our Prime Minister, were at loggerheads.
Okay.
And the Look East policy had been instigated, don't buy British, look east.
Okay.
So anyway, when it came to the trial, there was, I know this for a fact because I saw the telegrams, there was a lot of pressure by the Malaysians on the British government to have this statement excluded because it mentions the finance minister, it mentions senior government people,
Yeah.
to have it excluded from any trial.
Well,
Then Thatcher refused.
okay, very good. This is very, very interesting because as of November 8th, this month, this year, someone posted on the web that Mac was sent to Hong Kong on the instructions of a government official from Malaysia. And this poster, he says he's going to reveal it in due time, but he hasn't yet. But it's supporting what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but there was one other thing. On the day, let's get back to the day. Jalil goes to the Regent with a sum of money on him.
Yes.
That money disappears. Never found it. But you guys were on to Mac pretty quickly.
Yes.
He never had any of the money.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there was something else happening that day that was really important for George Tang, who's the chairman of the Carrion Group. Can you talk about the loan I'm referring to?
Yeah, there were several attempts to try and... Carrion was going bankrupt.
Okay.
And there were several attempts to try and save it from bankruptcy.
Okay. So they needed these loans to keep it going.
They needed that drawdown, the $4 million drawdown.
Okay, U.S. dollars.
Yes, it was as it described to me by my suit friends, my commercial crime people. This was a last-ditch attempt to try and save Carrion. The drawdown wasn't in itself a lot of money in the whole scheme of things. It was only $4 million US. But if it hadn't have gone through, then the last chance to
Save it.
would have collapsed.
Okay,
Right.
and there was a deadline
Yes,
on this day.
4 o'clock, I think
Yeah,
it was.
4:30
Or
on this
4:30.
4:30.
You know more than me.
I just read up on the
Oh,
press
okay.
stuff. Yeah, you lived it. So 4:30 was the deadline.
Yes.
And what I find this timeline, because at 4 o'clock, Jamil speaks to Henry Chin on the phone.
Yes.
And he says, don't release the money under any circumstance.
Yeah, Henry Chin had been trying to contact Jalil. He knew he was in that hotel room.
Yeah.
Right.
He knew about this meeting.
He knew that from the diary, at least, that he'd gone over to
Exchange money.
Exchange some money for the Tan Sri, but who was never there.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't stay the whole afternoon. And there was this meeting with George Tan and Lorraine Osman.
And Bentley Ho.
And Bentley Ho
Yeah.
to arrange the drawdown.
Yes. Now, now this is the bank, BMF, and Lorraine Osman is the chairman
Yes.
of BMF.
Yeah.
And he has sent a letter with George Tang and Bentley Ho. Bentley is George's right-hand man. And they go to the bank face to face with
Yeah.
Henry and say, release the loan by release it now.
Yeah,
They're saying this.
That's while Jalil was in that room with Mac Fontan and who
Yeah.
else?
So Jamil's stuck in this room, apparently, sometime between 12:30 and at least 4 o'clock, because he calls at 4 o'clock. And the last thing Henry says he hears is Jamil says, wait a minute. He's on the phone. And then
We believe that's when he was killed.
at 4 o'clock.
But Jalil also knew, being an auditor who had been sent over to supervise these technically
The internal auditing of the banks.
the illegal loans.
And yeah,
He
yeah.
knew that the supervisory committee had been set up at
Yes.
the headquarters. And he knew that only they could authorize a drawdown, any further drawdowns.
Okay.
He knew that despite Osman being who he was, he had no authority to act alone.
Okay. So the loan, is it released?
Yes,
Yeah, it's released.
yes.
So this is completely irregular. But I guess Henry Chin felt he was caught with too many bosses.
Yes, Henry Chin was in a bad position, and he wasn't senior. He wasn't the senior guy in the bank, or even that branch of the bank. So there was very little he could do.
Okay, so now they got Abraham kind of locked down between 12:30 and 4 o'clock in this room, and he's still refusing to give permission to release the monies. Is that the reason he paid with his life, do you think?
I believe so.
Okay, because it's not murder over $35,000 when you have billions of dollars at stake here. So,
But there's also evidence from the phone calls and evidence from meals being delivered, etc. That Jalil wasn't held there by force. He wasn't kidnapped and forced to stay in that room.
okay, because he ordered food for lunch
There
or
was
something.
food ordered, and there was the phone call, Henry Chin's phone call. There was no suggestion that he was held against his will. Now that in itself, knowing Mac Fontan and having spent hours with him, and even after the trial, gone to visit him in prison,
Yeah.
and Julio, he wouldn't have the authority or the reason or to keep Jalil there. While there's such an important issue going on back at the office,
Yeah.
the drawdown, which shouldn't have gone ahead.
Yes.
According to everything that we found in Commercial Crime Fund, this drawdown should not have happened without the say-so of the supervisory committee
Which was in Malaysia.
in Malaysia.
Okay.
So there was a very important issue going on. And as you say, Tan had even visited Jalil to try and push this issue. So he was, on the face of it, alone with Mac Fontan and a Korean. In Mac Fontan's imagination, a Korean. Now, put the Korean aside if he never existed.
Okay.
Mac alone with Jalil just doesn't stand up.
Okay.
Jalil's an intelligent man, professional man, extremely honest man from what we could all find. He would not have. He would not have been kept in that room with Jalil unless there had been a very important official known to Jalil with authority, also in that room.
I see.
You understand?
I do understand.
He's not handcuffed. He's not forced to stay there. Jaleel Mac Fontan would never have had the authority to keep him there.
Okay. So there was another person, but not a Korean.
No, not the Korean. The Korean, as I'll tell you later, didn't exist.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Now, this is one question. The suitcase is purchased from
Yes.
New World Center,
Yes.
which today is K11, which is right, it's adjoined to the Regent Hotel.
Yeah.
You can directly walk
Yes.
without going to the street. You can walk right there. And I was down there the other day, and on the left-hand side, when I walked through the passageway, was a suitcase store.
That's probably the one.
That's probably the one where he bought. So this is, Mac testified, took him 20 minutes. Get down there, buy the thing, and come back up. However, is Jaleel alone in the room during that 20 minutes?
No, he could not have been.
Okay, so
If he was held against his will, then he's not alone.
yeah.
Or maybe he's tied up. But the phone call refutes that.
Okay, so
but-
someone's in there entertaining him or occupying him.
But he may have been dead before Mike left the room to get the suitcase.
Okay, well, that's strange too, because we know he's alive at 4.
Yes.
Okay, but the store says, according to the court record, the store says it was sold 1:30 at the latest.
Oh, sorry, I'm mixed up in my times. You correct me again.
Okay, here.
It's okay, don't worry.
But it's interesting because Mac gives 2 stories.
Yes.
The first story he says is 3 o'clock he goes to get the suitcase. Now this fits in with the story that someone told him to go get it while Jamil was alive.
Yeah.
That's 3 o'clock, so he's back at 3:20 or 3:30. So that's where the story goes wrong because Jamil is still alive when he gets back. The other story he later changes in his defense that he went at 4 o'clock. And that fits in with the story because by the time he gets back, Jamil is dead.
Yeah.
So this is very complicated, which is what brings me to what I think was the most important point, which was your line of questioning. So regardless of the timeline, you basically asked him, did you know why you were
Yeah.
going to get the suitcase? And he said yes.
Yeah.
And you followed that question up was, what was the suitcase going to be used for? And what did he say?
Put the body in.
To put the body in. So by that, when you read the court record, you've caught him.
Yeah, for murder.
Yeah, you've caught him for murder. No, so
Not accessory after the fact.
yes.
Aiding and abetting the actual murder. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's Crime Ordinance number 90. Section 90 of the Criminal Procedure Ordinance.
Yeah.
This holds him accountable
Yeah.
for the murder. So regardless how he lied or changed his stories, your line of questioning that was then put in the hospital, that was then put into the court records, is what actually pinned this squarely on him. However, from what we're talking now, it does appear there was another person in that room.
I've always believed there was another person in that room.
Okay.
Let me deal with the Korean first.
Okay.
There's another statement which the judge during the trial said he would have allowed in, but the prosecutor decided not to even try to get it in. He thought we were pushing too far with the 3 that we had to put the other one in. But the judge actually said, I will allow these 3 in, and I would have allowed the other one if you had presented it to the court. He knew the substance of the statement, the 4th statement. Now, the 4th statement was focusing on Shin.
Okay, the Korean.
The Korean. So, okay, you said that there was a Korean who killed the guy in the room. Who is this Korean? Describe him. So I explained to you that when he was describing him, he picked this up, but I saw the glint in his eye. I knew he was using this.
Okay.
And where did you meet him? And so then I wanted him to give me, I knew he was lying, but I know his tactic of mixing truth with lies. So I wanted him to give me sufficient that we could actually trace the real Shin, because he based this fictional Shin on a real Shin. When he said that he met him in the Shangri-La Hotel together with the Lowe brothers, who were fairly prominent businessmen in town at that time, So we asked him to give approximate dates, so he narrowed it down to approximate time of year, and so we knew we could go and look there if there was anyone, and he was staying in the same hotel, the Shangri-La, with the Low brothers and with Shin.
Okay.
Right? He just described them as Shin, and they were discussing a possible business deal involving military issues, not guns or bombs, but rucksacks and parachutes and things of that nature.
Okay.
Not weapons. But the deal never went through.
Okay.
So that gave me a very good good live inquiry to narrow down who this Shin man was. So anyway, this part of the fourth statement, which was never put into the evidence in court, was all designed to try and get more information about Shin.
Okay.
So we dissected all of the things that before the trial and after the initial investigation was over, we'd caught Mac, and we're fixing up to do the trial 6 months later. We dissected all the statements, bits and pieces, into further investigations that we needed to do. Like when Mac came, what flight was he on?
Yes.
Who else was on that flight? That Osman was the same flight as Mac when they arrived in Hong Kong. Things of that nature. And we had a lot of further investigation to do. Not just that we'd bagged Mac and then look on. We had to look into his wife.
Okay.
We went to Kale and interviewed his family. Not his family, but the family of Jalil. So we did some investigations in the Bumiputra Bank in KL.
Okay.
Myself and senior superintendent, Douglas Lau Yuk Kun, an excellent man who gave me full support. And there were very sensitive investigations over the next year, right, concerning the allegations about government involvement. People it was essentially a government bank.
Yes.
So there was a strong inference that some very senior people had been involved in.
From what I read, a lot of this points to the finance minister.
So we actually went to the headquarters of the Bank Bumiputra, and I remember one afternoon, and we wanted to know if anyone had ever seen Mac Phuong Thanh at the headquarters. And I was pulled aside by someone in the bank who was part of the police contingent accompanying us, senior guy. And he pulled me aside and he said, "They have seen Mac come to this office many times." So Mac Phuong Thanh was known around the headquarters, and I'm talking about the senior executive floor and the headquarters. He was known.
So he's really quite connected.
It connected, yes. Yeah. And later on I found a connection between him and the King of Malaysia. There's the rotating king.
Wow.
And he was actually tasked by the king to help sell his BMW. And we had photographs of that in different, so we knew this was true.
Okay.
So he was a fixer.
Okay. At the highest levels.
He was a gopher, doing odd jobs for these very senior people.
Yeah.
But most important to me, he was seen in the executive floor of
the bank
many times.
Yeah.
So he had connections with the bank. So, but it was very, very difficult for us to pin that down because it was so political, and these people were so senior. We had insufficient to accuse them. We had influence, and we had, like the incidents I told you.
Yes.
This person has seen Mac many times. He's got his photograph.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen him here many times.
Okay.
But because it was so sensitive and so dangerous, I couldn't openly question these people.
Okay.
Or say, "Can you help me to give me a..." No way, because I would be endangering their life.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
okay.
So,
but let's just jump back to that fourth set of witness statements or statements concerning the Korean. So, because the story today is there's a Korean, a mysterious Korean who might or might not have been there. You choose what you want to believe. But what you're saying now, there was a Korean named Shing that you actually found him, and you know he was not in that room.
Let me tell you. When we only had the name Shin. It's like Smith in English.
Okay. Yeah.
We had a description. But most important, we had a time window when the Low brothers, Mac Fun Tan, and Shin were all staying at the Shangri-La. Now, this was some years back, so years before the murder. So I sent a team up to the storeroom up in the New Territories where the Shangri-La kept their records, which they're duty bound to keep for, I think, 7 years for tax purposes.
Yeah.
So one of my best station sergeants was in charge of that team. And they were up there for 3-4 days, going through thousands and thousands of documents. And he phoned me. He said, I've got a Shin together with the Low brothers, and together with Mac staying at the Shangri-La. And his name is Shin Kab Yong. And this is his passport number, this is his details. So we had Shin.
Okay. Right. So you tracked him down.
We tracked him down. And we also went to Los Angeles to track down the Low brothers. Because the Low brothers could corroborate the story or not corroborate it about this meeting, the deal to discuss the rucksacks
sell
and stuff
military supplies.
Low brothers were in Los Angeles, so myself and Douglas Lau flew to Los Angeles, and we tracked them down. They were a bit sensitive because ICAC at the time was looking into their business stuff, but they spoke to us because we focused purely on Mac, and they corroborated this story. That Mac had been in this discussion with Shin Kab Yong.
Yes.
So we were building up a picture of Mark as being a bit of a on the sidelines businessman, trying to put deals together. During the trial, we finished the prosecution case, but I think it was during the defense case, the matter came up. We asked for an adjournment because we wanted to get Shin Kab Yong to understand.
Yeah.
Now, we tried that before because I went up with Douglas Lau to track Shin Kab Yong down. We knew his name, his passport, so we asked the Korean police to track him down for us. So we went up there, the two of us, and the Korean police, the South Korean police, of course, were very helpful. They took Shin Kab Yong to our hotel room. We were sitting, waiting on Shin Kab Yong to arrive, and as soon as he walked in the door, I knew this Shin Kab Yong was no hitman. Just instinct, no, he's not a hitman. He does exist, but he's not a hitman. We took a statement from him, and he was involved at that meeting with the Low brothers, with Mac Fun Tan, who he knew to be just a low-level businessman trying to put a deal together. There was discussion of rucksacks and haversacks and stuff of that nature for marine stuff, and he was involved in that. But the deal never went through. And we asked if he was willing to come give evidence, but he said, yeah, he's got no problem. And he wasn't in Hong Kong at the time. They could prove that with his passports and stuff like that. And anyway, we knew that he wasn't on his passport in Hong Kong. At that time, when we located him, he was a toy salesman. He was selling toys. That was his job. He was a very innocent family guy. I kind of liked him. He was not involved with shady dealings at all. But the problem was because it was a military, even not weapons, the Korean government couldn't allow him to come to give evidence. Right. So
for national security reasons of Korea.
Yes. Towards the end of the trial, we need to find this Shin. We need to bring Shin to the trial. So Douglas Lau asked the British consulate in Hong Kong to contact the Korean consulate and just have one ditch try. And we contacted the American authorities to try and go up and get permission and ask the Americans to put a bit of pressure. This was not weapons, it's only minor fringe military stuff. There's no security issues in it. And we managed to get, he actually accompanied Shin back to Hong Kong to the trial. And so he was the witness on the trial.
So he testified?
He testified. And it was quite amazing. I was in court at the time, of course, and he had all along, he'd given his evidence and said Shin was here and Shin did that and Shin described Shin and all these issues. And we knew it wasn't the Shin. There was a Shin, but this wasn't the Shin. So we brought the real Shin after he'd given his evidence in rebuttal.
Okay. Mac gave the evidence.
Mac gave the evidence in his defense
Okay.
about he wasn't the killer. It was the Korean called Shin.
Okay, and then you brought Shin in.
After he'd completed his evidence, we asked for permission to
Bring Shin
bring
in.
Shin to the stand.
Okay.
So he did. Shin gave evidence, said he knew Mac Phuong Thanh, gave the dates when he was in the hotel with Shangri-La Hotel with Lo.
Yeah.
Gave evidence that he was not in Hong Kong at that time. Right? Gave evidence of what his business was and what his dealings were way back then, which corroborated Mac's story.
Yes. Yes.
But so we showed Mac to be lying.
yes.
And then Shin was allowed to come back and try and counter it and said, this is not the right Shin. And the judge said, how many Shins do you want us to bring?
Yeah. Yeah. I was about to ask him the next question.
Yeah,
Could it have been another Shin or
No.
No.
And the jury at that time were almost laughing.
Okay.
So that was a very crucial part of the case that I haven't seen in any of these
Yeah.
Joker's books or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Ian Robinson's book, The Joker, he leaves it as a mystery. Maybe
it's
those
not a-
Korean, or maybe this is what Max says.
There's no Korean.
Okay.
We found Shin Kabyong. And
Okay.
it's irrefutable that he is the one that Mac used as a
Scapegoat, attempting to.
no. He was trying to use the Korean, so he based his lies on the real Korean that he knew.
To invent this fictional,
The fictional
that was half true.
hitman,
Yeah, okay.
including this.
Yeah. So-
there was no hitman.
Yeah. I think, so the bathrobe, the toweling.
Yeah, that was without a doubt. It was the same. It was from the Regent Hotel.
Okay, and
One of the first things we did was to get a sample to send to the forensic chemist.
okay, and the forensic just nailed that as part of the.
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
same.
Because later on the day of the murder, from what I've read, at 11:30, Mac returned with his wife to the hotel
Yes.
and asked for a replacement
Yes.
towel,
Yeah.
making him appear more guilty.
Yeah.
So, so forensic, did the 10-cent Malayan coin do anything besides show the person was Malaysian?
No, it just indicated that the deceased was Malaysian. That was all.
Okay,
Which then led to checking missing persons, and we had a Malaysian who was
missing.
missing.
Okay, the
So-
banker. Now,
The murder was the easy part.
Oh.
In the sense of the investigation.
okay.
Yeah.
So you catch your man pretty quickly,
Yes.
and we go to court, and then we have a bunch of grounds for the defense during the appeal case, which is number 253, 1984,
Yes.
appeal case before judges Roberts, McMullen, and Silky.
I was there.
You were there, so you're
Yes.
in this.
Yes, I know.
Okay, very good. Mac's defense team makes some grounds to try to throw out
Of course. Yeah.
your statements. This is par for the fair, this
Yeah,
par
of
for the
course,
course. So one was inducement, that you basically said to Mac that you would keep all the statements personal.
Let me deal with that first.
Okay.
During the interrogation, the first day, solicitors turned up at the custodial ward.
Okay.
They weren't in the ward; they were outside, and the staff told us there were some lawyers there.
Yeah.
So Peter and I went to so it was, and there was a couple of lawyers there that said they were lawyers for Mac Phuong Thanh. So we came back to Mac and said, there's two lawyers outside there that said they're hired by you, and he didn't want to see them. They said, they're not hired by me. He was kind of scared.
Someone else hired them.
No, I don't want to see them.
Okay.
So we told them that, and we got a statement from Mac saying he didn't want to see them. So we told them to go away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because that was another ground. He wasn't allowed representation.
No, he was. Of course, we couldn't.
Okay.
He didn't want the lawyers to be
Yeah.
there.
Okay, but apparently by the third or fourth day,
Yes.
then he let the lawyers go.
Yeah, if he wants the lawyers, we can't stop them. Yeah.
And these lawyers then claim that they asked for a copy of your interview. And in essence, the police gave them a copy,
Yeah.
but they said, they tried to imply that didn't happen. So the lawyers were the judge didn't buy it.
No, and
Okay, so one of the grounds was denied access to legal advisors. So that's basically what you're saying is untrue.
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's another ground was he claimed he was physically assaulted while he was in the bed by Inspector Good.
Good. Okay. Well,
So-
Mac was there.
Yeah.
I was actually sitting on the bed. There's
Yeah.
Mac's head, and
Okay.
Peter Good was where you're sitting.
Okay.
And he alleged that Peter was tweaking his toes and giving him a lot of pain.
Yeah. That's right. He was supposed to be pulling his toes or something.
Pulling his toes.
Yeah.
Now, remember, we were in a hospital ward.
Yes.
There was nurses coming in and out. There was other patients there. He wasn't alone.
Okay.
There was doctors coming. How ridiculous that we'd virtually torture a prisoner in a hospital ward
Okay. By squeezing his toe.
by squeezing his toe.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Anyway, he was fully cooperating with us. It was just clear from the statements. Why would anyone want to put...
There's no need.
Well, it would be illegal to do it, but why would you even think about it when he's cooperating?
Okay. Now, they also made another ground, oppression.
Yes.
They basically said oppression and prolonged interrogation.
Yeah.
You guys asked him too many questions, you went for too long. However, I've seen the records, there were breaks allowed. And it wasn't a 24-hour deal.
No, to be fair,
Yeah.
there was a reasonable ground to challenge the statements.
Okay.
The breaks weren't long enough in retrospect.
Okay.
It should have been longer.
So what was he getting and what should have it been?
We should have given them longer breaks.
Like
But
an hour?
he was enjoying the interrogation.
Oh, okay.
If you understand his character, he
Having
loved
fun.
the attention. Mm-hmm. And he loved telling us about how the foreign minister sent him here and there and did errands for him and taking bags of money for the foreign minister. He loved telling us these stories.
Okay.
That was his character.
Okay.
So it was difficult to stop him. So, okay, let's take a break for an hour. Yeah. But in retrospect, to protect the statement for a future voir dire, I should have given longer breaks.
Okay.
So I would accept that criticism, but it wasn't so critical the judge would throw the statement out.
Okay. Now, another ground they tried to get appeal was that during the statement process, he was not charged. He was cautioned, but he wasn't charged.
No, it was actually, we had a magistrate come to the hospital because he was in a custodial ward. So the court came to the hospital. He didn't go to the court.
Okay. You know, there's
And put him on remand. He was charged, and actually the magistrate put him on remand by coming to the court. Coming to the custodial ward.
okay. Just as a matter of completeness,
Yeah.
the defense also tried to get the statements excluded, and the case. One of the grounds for appeal was misdirection by the judge. I'm not going to go into that. Simply put, that the Court of Appeal felt the judge of first instance acted fairly and properly.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with his misdirections. Now, there is something that has come to me through the grapevine about Mac. Now, you've just said how he, in the beginning, he would talk about his connections to this minister of finance, or foreign minister, and however, by the time you go to court, his story has changed. This foreign minister, finance minister,
I made it up.
you made it up. Okay, so that's what he said. You made it up.
Yes, I couldn't have made that up.
Okay, because
I didn't even know at that time what was a tunku,
what is a
a
tunku?
lord in the Malaysian sort of.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, so this is still a live issue because someone else is pursuing this online, and we can speak about it more. But the Carrion affair, I think, is not the only time this has happened with Malaysia. If we follow someone called Joe Lau, this has been repeated.
The history repeated itself a few years ago.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's and it's tied to seems to be tied to the same element of the government in Malaysia.
The finance minister.
Yes, that they're repeating this. So Mac, I heard all his needs. He changed his story. He kept his mouth shut regarding these ministers, and from that point forward, I understand everyone in his family has been taken care of.
I can't say that, but I can say that I did go to visit him in prison several times.
Okay, and
And he told me face to face, I can't speak. I wanted him to open up
Okay.
and perhaps get his sentence reduced.
Okay, because he has a rapport with you now.
Yes, and
Yeah.
oh, and by the way, on the Peter Good tweaking his toes during the trial, when Peter gave evidence, Mac Fontaine burst out laughing because Peter Good had just had a haircut, and he thought it was very funny.
Uh-huh.
So they had a very good rapport.
Okay. Was his rapport better with Peter than yours?
I think so. Peter's a very funny guy.
Okay.
I'm very serious. So
Okay.
I think he got quite fond of Peter.
Okay.
So anyway, that was a parliament in court. Anyway, let's move on to what I was saying about after the conviction when he was in prison.
Yeah.
I went to see him many times,
Many as in 5,
3, 4 times,
3, 4 times.
trying to find out if he'd cooperate with us. And he quite frankly told me, no, I've got family there.
He's got family, so
Yeah,
there's
he couldn't.
okay. So as long as his mouth is shut, his family's taken care of. He opens that mouth, the family's in danger.
Yes.
Okay.
And there was also, which is not well known now, but it's so long ago, some instances of alleged poisoning, trying to poison him while he was in prison.
Oh.
There was another incident where I was called in or asked specifically by the government through the police to investigate the disappearance of the chief prison doctor, who was also the personal physician for the governor of Hong Kong. And he disappeared. And so I was asked to investigate that. This was shortly after the allegations of attempts to poison Mac Fontaine.
So
So I was dragged back in again to look at this, and I went to see his wife. He'd apparently disappeared for 24 hours. He'd gone walking in the hills.
The doctor?
Yeah, the doctor.
Okay.
Which is not far from Braemar Hill. Where,
Jeez.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
and he'd been lost, and the police had been called. They'd even called out the RAF Wessex helicopters, which are huge birds.
Uh-huh.
You can hear them miles off. And
Okay.
they have night sun and very powerful, and they were flying around looking for him.
Yeah.
And he came home about 24 hours later, said that he'd been lost in the hills.
Do you believe that?
No.
Okay.
And he'd never seen the helicopters, which is impossible.
Okay. So is there any, what's his connection to the poison
We don't know.
and to Mac?
It's all, and there's many, many other instances of apparent suicides with bankers down the years.
Justice Dennis Barker died on November 18, 1989, aged 63. Justice Barker was encouraged by Chief Justice Sir Denny Roberts to step down from the Court of Appeal to hear George Tan's first case in the Court of First Instance. After 281 days of the trial, Barker ruled that George Tan and his fellow 5 defendants had no case to answer. Barker was killed in a car accident in Cyprus. Sir Denny Roberts, also in Cyprus, would later assist Barker's widow with Barker's burial. After being missing for a month, Malaysian bank accountant, Ahmad bin Saad, was found in the jungles around Kuala Lumpur. He had been stabbed multiple times. ICAC exhibits officer and investigator, Tom Leung Zifun, aged 38, was found dead on 18th February 1993. It is noted at least 4 critical exhibits had disappeared from the ICAC warehouse during the Carrion cases. Exhibit officer Leung allegedly leapt off the 22nd floor of a building on Des Voeux Road, where he operated. Tom left 2 suicide notes. One to his wife, and one to his workplace. John Wimbush found dead on April 13, 1984. John was a senior partner at Deacon's, and was representing Carrion. While Jalil Ibrahim was strangled with a white bathrobe belt, John was found dead with a nylon rope around his neck in his pool. At the other end of the rope was a 55-pound concrete manhole cover. John was scheduled to be questioned by the police. The police concluded it was death by suicide partly because, just like ICAC officer Tom Leung, he left 2 suicide notes, one to his family and one to his workplace.
Yeah.
But I went to see him several times, and he said he couldn't open up
Okay.
because of his family.
Do you recall when was the last time you see him? The
Probably about a year after he was
sentence?
in prison, yeah.
Okay. Is he still in sentence or under? Or has
No,
he,
he's released,
he's been released. He's back in Malaysia.
yes. I hope he stays there.
Okay. So we still don't know who the third person in that room was.
I've got,
You have an idea.
but
No, that's
no,
okay.
there's
That's
no
okay.
evidence, so there's not sufficient evidence. There's no way I would do.
There was in the judgment something to support Mac's story, right down here, paragraph 7, about the double locking of room 609 when they knew Mac was not in the room, implying there was a third person
Yes.
who double locked the door because you can only do it from the inside.
Yes.
Yeah. So we just have a little mystery there.
There was also another indicator, the food deliveries.
Oh yes.
Yeah, Mac was Jaleel was a Muslim. Mac's not a Muslim.
And the food was for.
There were 2 deliveries for halal food.
Oh, so there was 2 Muslims in the room, unless Jaleel ate 2 dishes.
No, there was one of the dishes was bacon sandwich. I think Jaleel would not have had a bacon sandwich.
Yeah, that's right. The bacon.
But
It's
Mac
against the
would be quite
religion.
happy to have a bacon sandwich. So there was the indications. There was also another indication from one of the room boys. When he went into the room, there was a group of documents on the desk. We know that when Jaleel came to the hotel, he had a little handbag, that's all.
Okay,
He carried no briefcase and no documents.
so he didn't bring those documents. So there was some other business going on.
Yes. So these are strong indications to us that there was business going on there.
Yeah.
My take on it is because having visited Jaleel's family and knowing his reputation as
Yes.
an extremely honest,
Yes.
well-respected auditor who was sent there to try and find out the truth about this unsecured loans,
Yes.
billions of dollars unsecured loans.
Yes.
And his wife was quite clear that he was worried, very worried about his safety because
Yes.
of the letters she sent him, or he
Yes.
sent her. So he knew he was in some kind of danger,
Okay.
right? And I know that Mac, knowing his personality, alone wouldn't have the capability to keep an intelligent man, professional man in that room.
He was also a graduate from
not-
the military academy.
Not against his will.
Yeah.
Not against his will. Jaleel, it's quite clear, was not held against his will.
Okay. So you mentioned before that when it's time for someone to fight for their life, when they think they're going to die, they're going to fight like hell.
Oh yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
no way Mac could have taken
Alone.
alone Jamil.
If he moved very quickly, possibly. Possibly.
So the weapon is just toweling.
Just a towel.
So you wrap it around, but
There would be severe disruption in the room.
yeah. Did you have that severe? No. So someone, is it possible someone else was restraining, say, Jamil's legs while one person is?
Could be, but don't forget the body was found a few days after they left the room. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. But the room was not disheveled or anything.
no.
Okay.
There's still a lot of mysteries.
Yeah, there is still a lot of mystery to this. And I don't think this is over from what I see online. There's some other people implying they're going to come out with more material, especially regarding the ministers. I'll show that to you later.
It's a long time ago, and
Yes.
a lot of the people involved have gone. Let's see.
Yeah, but there's still some people looking into this. But like you say, let's see. I think we covered a lot of ground today on this case. Thank you again for sharing your professional experience and expertise with this, Norman. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Yeah.
And if you like this episode, Dangerous Persons 2.0 English channel, please subscribe, thumbs up, share, and comment. Thank you so much. And a big thanks to Norman. Cheers.
Yes.
A little coffee. Okay.